Good morning, folks. Today is Tuesday, July 15th, 2025. Welcome to the Post Morning Show, the unaffiliated follow-up to Mark Halperin's two-way morning meeting with Sean Spicer and Dan Turntine. Today's topics: education, back to the states, that's topic one, how POTUS can disarm Fed chair, topic two, how the big, beautiful bill will allow President Trump to finally finish the border wall. First topic to dive into it: Supreme Court clears the way for Trump administration to massively reduce the size of the Department of Education. This is from SCOTUS blog, links in the show description. The Supreme Court on Monday granted the Trump administration's request to temporarily pause an order by a federal judge in Massachusetts that would require the Department of Education to reinstate nearly 1,400 employees who were fired earlier this year as part of the department's efforts to reduce the size of the workforce. On March 21st, the president announced that programs for students with special needs and the federal student loan portfolio would be transferred from the Department of Education to the Department of Health and Human Services and the Small Business Administration, respectively. One more article on this: Supreme Court lets Trump take sledgehammer to Education Department for now. That's from courthousenews.com. The Supreme Court once again recognized what regressive district court judges refuse to accept. President Trump, as head of the executive branch, has absolute constitutional authority to direct and manage its agencies and officers, says Liz Huston, a White House spokesperson. Last of all, from our president himself, this is a Truth Social post. The United States Supreme Court has handed a major victory to parents and students across the country by declaring the Trump administration may proceed on returning the functions of the Department of Education back to the states. I agree with the president. All right, Joshua Johnson, what is your take on this?
So I'm just digging into this case. It's Linda McMahon, Secretary of Education et al., v. New York et al., on the application for a stay. So the application for a stay is based on the lower court or the circuit court's preliminary injunction. This probably ties into the last case where the Supreme Court ruled that universal preliminary injunctions were outside the scope of the circuit court jurisdiction. But again, this is a stay. This is a stay of the temporary injunction pending the disposition of the appeal in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the First Circuit. So, and disposition of a petition for a writ of certiorari. A writ of certiorari is just a different type of appeal to the Supreme Court. So this, again, it's interesting. I guess the media has to do this, but every time I see a headline about the Supreme Court and what they did and what they didn't do, I just sort of cringe as an attorney, because they always, they sometimes their TLDR is just condenses things down to the point where it misses the point entirely.
And Joshua, what was that Latin term?
Writ of certiorari.
I always enjoy my steaks with certiorari sauce.
So it's a discretionary order that's issued by a high court to a lower court, directing the court to send up a record of a case. So the writ of certiorari is essentially like, hey, lower court, send us these records so we can review it. The other famous writ is a writ of mandamus, which is essentially an order to a public official to do a certain thing that the public official is supposed to do. So, for example, a county clerk doesn't want to grant a marriage license to a gay couple applicant, but that's contrary to the state's laws. The gay couple would seek a writ of mandamus from the court to order that clerk to, to grant the marriage license. Just
Okay.
things like that.
Thank you, Joshua. Peter, perfect time for the sip. Here you go.
Yeah, no, that Josh explained it pretty well. I do think that, yeah, people, I mean, the average person who sort of commentates on this stuff doesn't understand because they don't, have the legal understanding. They don't get these sort of fine distinctions between like, because like I think your average headline on this was like, Supreme Court rules that Trump can dismantle Department of Education, or it's like,
Right.
number one, they haven't actually ruled that yet. I mean, from what I understand, Josh, the substance of the ruling for it dissolves the injunctions, right? But it essentially, what essentially that means is that while the merits of the case are being adjudicated, the employees who've been laid off or let go as a result of this don't have to be rehired, which I believe, right, was what the district judge in question was trying to order the Department of Education to do, uh, is to keep those employees like I believe that was the case, right? Um, Although it is, I mean, there is the point that in these kinds of appeals, in deciding whether or not to issue these kinds of stays, the Supreme Court does issue they do take into account the likelihood of success on the merits. So I think it's pretty likely, barring something unforeseen, that ultimately they will, when this case gets up to being like fully, if and when it gets, up to being fully decided on the merits at the Supreme Court, they will rule in favor of the Trump administration being able to do this with the Department of Education. And I think someone pointed out, like, and this is, I think, is another example of the um, the left of the wing of the legal world in this legal judicial world in this country kind of losing their minds. Someone pointed out that in the I don't know who wrote the dissent to this, but someone pointed out that they quoted
Alito.
no, I thought it was a majority.
Dissent to the
This
McMahon
Department of Education
majority.
decision. I mean,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah, that was Sotomayor,
right.
Right.
who wrote the dissent with Kagan and Jackson.
Right.
Joint.
So someone pointed out yesterday that in the dissent, they quote the executive order. Where is it?
Yeah, ordering the Secretary of Education to, quote, take all necessary steps to facilitate the closure of the department.
Yeah, but they left out the part where it specifically says in accordance with current law,
Yes.
basically.
Well, yeah.
So it's like, okay, that's a bit questionable there.
Yeah, thank you for that, Peter. That's why I mentioned just that for the disabilities, like there was some allowance being made there. I want to welcome our new guest. We're talking about the recent Supreme Court decision regarding the Department of Education. Chancel, you're next. Oh, you're muted, Chancel.
Sorry. I'm not coming from the angle of the legal side because it's I'm not a lawyer. I don't know. I mean, I think Josh and the other guys know better. Um, I'm just coming from the point of view of the Department of Education when I looked at um, when it was set up. I think it was 1980 under the Carter administration, right? So, and then I was looking back at actually when I was in school in Florida, which is around 1982. And so whatever that I went through or, got my education in chemical engineering was very much set up way before a federal education department was in existence, and the quality of the education and how it was, you don't build it over 2 years. So, I mean, you basically had an advanced education system, an advanced commercial system, an advanced uh, technical capability ahead of everybody else without a federal education system. So I think you're just reverting to where it originally was, which is you're fine doing everything without a federal education system. So I think I mean my where I'm coming from is basically I think it's the move is right to bring it back to the state and let the private sector or or those that are funded from each of the state carry on the way it has always been. Why waste money at the federal level and just add bloat and bureaucracy to the education system? That's all my point. Thanks.
Thank you, Shamsul. Claudio from Italy. Hey, welcome back.
Hey, haven't heard from him in a long time.
Yeah, I think that one of the issues that the Democrats don't understand is that we should distinguish between the cut what is non-statutory of the Department of Education and what is statutory of the Department of Education. And when they say in accordance to law, it means that the Secretary of Education he can cut everything that is non-statutory without Congress assent. And just in few cases, the Senate will say, hey, you have to do a rescission package for something. But that's not the case because Trump and McMahon clearly said that Pell Grants will remain as they are. All the Fulbright will remain as they are. That is all statutory stuff that is remaining. All the stuff that's being cut off is all the stuff related with the trade unions and the teaching unions. And that's the reason all of the brouhaha against the diminishment or the cancellation of the Department of Education, because it will be difficult for them to fight this kind of fight at the state level, because they will find the Texan guy or the South Dakota guy with the gun say, hey, I will not give you money to do your syndicate unionist shit. Sorry, like the federal government will spend the money on school vouchers, on school choice, not on the decolonization and this kind of bullshit. Let's be honest. I think that's the only thing. And I think the problem, rather than legal, is political, because I don't think the Senate will find the 60 senators to let this thing happen, while at the House probably can have a better occasion, to be honest. And regarding what you were saying, Duke, regarding the lastimos categories in education, one of the reasons is what these unions done in this time. The fact that Asian students are not educated like American students or Latino students. This reason is because of unions. To say, hey, everyone is different, so everyone should have a different standard. And that's not the way to create an education system that works. Let's be honest. If the poor is a good guy, he has a 100, he should not be treated worse because it's a poor guy. And it could be that the reason why that person instead of 100 will take 60 to his test.
Thank you for that, Claudio. Peter?
Totally agree with all that Claudio and Shamsul were saying before. And yeah, and yes, and like I saw your comments in the chat, Wesley. 100% cosign. Teachers unions are the worst. And so, but like, and then one last comment on the sort of, I guess, meta aspect of the legal thing. It's too bad. I saw the post in the chat. It's too bad that Andres is too busy doing high level info war at the United Nations to join us today, because I was going to further respond to something he said yesterday, where he quoted the thread by Senator Sheldon Whitehouse trying to argue for why. And, Ketanji Brown Jackson didn't write the dissent in this case. It was Sotomayor, basically being like, she's doing what Antonin Scalia did in the 80s. And, it's like writing, supposedly, it's like the idea is, she's writing these dissents that will, that are going to call out the bad stuff that's going on, and that'll change people's minds eventually. The problem is that to do that, you actually have to do things like give good arguments that rely on some understanding of the law besides I don't like this, therefore it's illegal and bad. And that's basically what, I mean, Sotomayor falls into this to a lesser extent, but that's basically what they have fallen into. Like a lot of the reasoning for why these left-wing judges have done what they have done in response to the administration is basically, I think this is bad. And I mean, there's more to it than this. I am being a bit reductive, but it's very, it's not exactly a triumph of reasoning, and I think it's going to continue to blow up in their face as they do this.
Thank you for that, Peter. Joshua?
At the core point of this dissent, and I think it's 19 pages long. I haven't read it all yet. I mean, and let's be honest, I don't have time to do all this. Okay. The core point that Sotomayor makes is that essentially this is the government repealing a law passed by Congress by another means, right? So by ordering Linda McMahon to essentially close the Department of Education, he's essentially unilaterally repealing a law that he can't do, that he otherwise wouldn't have the authority to do, because that has to be done by Congress. So that's what the thrust of this dissent is. And I see that logic. I get it. I see that logic. The court generally tries, whenever the court is reviewing the constitutionality of a thing, which it technically isn't here. But whenever they review a law, whenever they review an act by the government, they do so by first assuming that the law is constitutional. That's just sort of a rule of that's just sort of a rule of judicial review. They assume the law is constitutional, and in a way you can say that that's sort of an analog to criminal law, innocent until proven guilty, right? Constitutional until proven unconstitutional. And it's the plaintiff's burden of proof to show that the law is constitutional or unconstitutional. That is a gross oversimplification of civil procedure. Okay, like gross oversimplification. But I think for the purposes of this discussion, it works to get this point across. And look, you saw this with when the Roberts Court under Obama upheld the Affordable Care Act, the Affordable Care Act mandate, right, by calling it a tax, even though Nancy Pelosi and Barack Obama and everybody else and Chuck Schumer, yeah, exactly, when they all said this isn't a tax, this isn't a tax, this isn't a tax, this isn't a tax, right? So the Roberts Court, Justice Roberts, Chief Justice Roberts himself said, well, it's a tax, and Congress has the power to tax, and therefore it's constitutional. So they always try to find the constitutionality of a thing that's challenged. So just keep that in mind. In this case, this was an emergency petition to stay, the circuit court's ruling. It's on appeal now to the Court of Appeals. I don't know what point of law is being appealed, but that's where we are at this point. There's a request for cert if certiorari is granted. Again, that's the petition for the Supreme Court to review the ruling of the appellate court at this point, which again, that's where we are. Circuit court, appellate court, based on a principle of law that was that was objected to, then up to circuit court, or up to Supreme Court with a writ of certiorari to bring the record up to the higher court. So that's where we are. I think you can look at a lot of this from a conservative lens, and I mean from a a traditional conservative lens, right? A traditional conservative Republican lens, reducing the size of the federal government and giving more authority back to the states. I know I've spent a lot of time already talking, but I think the United States is a lot more like the European Union. I should say the European Union is a lot like the United States, except that at the Euro level, they're not as powerful, nearly as powerful as we are here at our federal level. But each of our states is akin to its own sovereign country, to a lesser degree, because we have that strong federal government. And really, education is such a local and state level preference that I think that's where education ought to be. The Department of Education, I'm not sure the Department of Education is necessary if other departments can do the same things that the Department of Education has done. And I mean, I don't know what, I mean, the Department of Justice can investigate civil rights violations in education just like it can in any other instance. The Treasury Department can handle loan applications and loan servicing and student loan forgiveness. So I just don't know what the Department of Education does that can't be done by another department already, or can't be rolled down to the states. The big problem is the taxes, right? Like, is revenue to the federal government is huge. And so we have to make sure, conservatives, right, have to make sure that if we're reducing taxes and income to the federal government, we've got to make sure that we're not also, that we're not shooting ourselves in the foot by also advocating for like lower state taxes or reductions in state taxes. State taxes are going to need to come up.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I'm done. Sorry, that was a lot of talking.
Well, and maybe, it's like, I just again reminded.
But at least I'm not a troll. At least I don't do like one sentence trolling.
I'm reminded of Office Space and the Bobs going to the Department of Education. So what is it that you actually do here? But maybe Peter can explain, or whatever. Go ahead.
I think what they actually do is, for the most part, just make things worse. I think, there's a broader critique of public education overall. First and foremost, in its current form, most egregiously, especially in a state like California. But really, if you go into the history, public education, like the public education system as we know it in the modern Western world, was born out of the French Revolution as a desire to basically
educate the masses.
In a very specifically secular and anti-Catholic context.
Brainwash.
Yes, it was designed to basically break the Catholic Church, and there's and then yes, more broadly, because the model took hold. The Germans had a lot of influence in forming it, but as a and if you look at sort of separately from that, Frederick the Great, the Prussian model, which took hold a lot as well, and inspired a lot of what we see in America as this essentially like militarized way of bringing people up. There's a good talk about this. I'll see if I can find it and post it in the chat if anyone is interested to check that out. I will do that.
Yeah, definitely. You said Prussian?
Prussian, yeah.
Yeah. Anything.
Those are sort of the two prongs. There's the post French Revolution aspect that comes in, and then there's the sort of Frederick the Great aspect as well.
Yeah, and one can even say the Confederation of German States, more like our U.S. situation here. Claudio from Italy. Go ahead and unmute there. There you go.
Yes. No, I was telling to say that together with the constitutionality of the thing, we should also check, in my opinion, the constitutional intention which some person is doing that act. And I will also use an example when, for example, Trump puts tax tariffs on other countries. Most of the time he uses the so-called Section 232, which is not constitutionally correct. While instead, if, for example, he will use the Svupali Act, it would be constitutionally correct until he will do a tariff of less than the 50%. And some people don't know that constitutionally a president can put a tariff on certain countries for diplomatic reason or foreign reason because of that act. And after 6 months, the Congress should decide if he has to continue or not. And the thing strange is that neither the libertarian critics of the tariff and neither the liberal critics of the tariff know about this thing, because they just watch on the thing that, hey, no, he's using Section 32, so it's not constitutional for him to do that. And the reason is simple. It's because he's not doing that with the right constitutional intention. Regarding instead Linda McMahon said that we will leave everything that is statutory, and all that the stuff that is statutory, the Congress will decide about it. And that is the constitutional intention. I don't understand why the U.S. Court of Appeal is against this stuff. Linda McMahon should also ask to the Congress if he can act constitutionally. It seems to be a bit ridiculous to me, let's be honest. If that is the intention, it doesn't make any sense to appeal to a constitutional choice on her behalf.
Thank you for that, Claudio. And I think we're going to be wrapping up on this topic. I noticed our friend in Massachusetts has his mic unmuted. Maybe he'd like to share an opinion.
Well, I guess. All right. So I'm interested in the function of the education department when it relates to is our kids learning, and the SAT and the ACT. I'm reading articles about how their scoring has changed over the years, and there seems to be, in my view, some sort of desire to test the kids from time to time, but not teach the kids to the test, or whatever they say, and in order to determine what's there. Also, there needs to be something, someone thinking about and sort of shooting out pronouncements from on high as to what is an appropriate curriculum, and and thinking about the future a little bit, and making suggestions as to what might be developed by the states in terms of their curriculum development and that sort of thing. So I think that nationally, maybe a government agency could be involved. And anyway, that's what I'm interested in right now.
Okay, thank you for that, Frank. Yes, before we shift to the next topic, I'll just share my own personal take that, again, how many ways are there to do the Pythagorean theorem, right? There's only so many ways to teach these topics. It should be easy to come up with a universal curriculum, universal textbook, PDF files, whatnot. If you just look at the textbook industry alone, they are gouging the taxpayers, and there's that textbook lobby with the principals or whatever to get $4,000 for some math book or whatever it is. Now we're going to move on to the next topic. Folks can hang out just for a second as I read through this. Okay, how Trump can secretly disarm the Fed chair. This is from the Wall Street Journal. I'm not making this stuff up. Okay, this is their YouTube. The link will be in the description. The president could create what's called a shadow Fed chair. One idea is just tell everybody this summer who you're going to pick, and that way you make Powell a lame duck. Powell's second stint as chair ends in May 2026. although his term on the board technically doesn't expire until January 2028. So if you said in October, hey, here's who the Fed chair is going to be, listen to this guy, it would be a way to undercut Jay Powell, who you are really unhappy with because he's not lowering interest rates as much as you want. Fed Governor Adriana Kugler's term on the board ends in January, which means Trump could nominate somebody to that job and they could take their seat in February, and then you could make that person the Fed chair when Jay Powell's term as chair is over. That's the Wall Street Journal providing a roadmap for the president. I take it as a positive omen. What say you, Joshua Johnson?
Yeah, I think that's 100% true. The president nominates the chair. The chair has to be a member of the Board of Governors, but that can also happen concurrently with his nomination to be Fed chair, and then the Senate approves it. I mean, I think that's pretty straightforward. I think, you know, he could do that if he wanted to. Powell doesn't really have any pressure at this point because, you know, because he's already a lame duck. But that doesn't, I mean, him being a lame duck, it doesn't really matter. I mean, it doesn't really matter. Powell knows he's not going to get renominated by Trump. So, and again, his term on the Board of Governors doesn't end with his term as chair. So, I mean, I think Powell has more, you know, freedom to act than maybe what the Wall Street Journal is indicating there. But for sure, yeah, if you're Trump, go ahead and name somebody you think, you know, is going to be good for that job and get the ball rolling for a nomination and confirmation early.
Okay, all right, President, you have support from the Marine in Virginia, Jen Judson. Josh was like, "Don't put words in my mouth." Hey, Jen, there.
No, I mean, it's true. Yeah, you're good. You're good.
Right.
Nope.
Thank you.
Actually, I don't need to talk. I was going to try and sneak something in on the last topic, but it's no big deal. So go on to Claudio.
Okay, appreciate that, Jen. Yeah, sorry, caught you a little late on the last one. Claudio from Italy.
I mean, I think it's a good device. It could happen also, for example, to a future Congress or to a future president to have already the decision of the future federal chair without that is already nominated as a federal chair official. It can be a shadow federal chair, and once the one that has to go, he can arrive as a substitute really simply. I think the device is correct. But at the same time, I have doubt on the thing that Josh was saying. Because, for example, I imagine what would happen, for example, in the case of the 2008 crisis, if, for example, Mervyn King, as his shadow governor bank, Mark Carney, arriving all of a sudden and saying, no, let's not focus on diminish inflation. Let's focus on green business. Let's focus on use inflation for the environment, the employment, this thing. I think the worst scary device of the shadow chair can be that he can put a limit on the objectives that can have the official federal chair. I don't know if you understand what I mean, Raul.
Say that one more time, Claudio. Sorry, the chat was...
That my scary of a shadow federal chair is that he could not allow to the official federal chair to implement what he wants to do as a federal chair reserve boss. For example, I was making the example that Mervyn King, when it was the governor of the United Kingdom, his objective was diminish the inflation. And instead, for example, if it was already shadow bank governor Carney, the now Prime Minister of Canada, I would have said, no, let's not focus on inflation. Let's focus on money for the green subsidies. Let's put focus on employment. Let's put focus on diversity. Is that my scare of a shadow Fed chair? Exactly.
We appreciate that concern. Dean from Ohio.
Good morning, everyone. Just because President Trump can make the Fed chair a lame duck doesn't mean he should. If the report out today of interest or inflation going up 2 point something, I can't remember what it was, but above 2%, then a natural move, if that continues, would be probably to raise the rates, not decrease the rates. Now, again, I am no expert in this, but steady hand on the monetary policy. I don't mind Trump's Trumpian nature when it comes to this, but before you start truly effing us with monetary policy or effing with the monetary policy, I think, and let's be clear, he's done a good job this far. The president has done a good job and kept things back in line. Most notably, everyone thought oil prices were going to go up after the incursion with Iran, and nothing happened. The markets are starting to bake in tariff or Trump's tariff policy. So that's taken care of. But if prices are going up, and I wish Aaron was here to talk about that. He was throwing some comments around inside of the main show on lease pricing in July and August are really going to be signs of direction further to come. So let's everybody slow their roll down and steady as she goes.
Yeah, we miss Aaron. People got to bring him back on to the show. But Dean, before if I can ask you, did you hear Midas touch on the morning show?
This morning?
Midas? Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. I thought Mr. Midas, whoever he is, he was on. Mark had him on, and he said the rates were inflation was actually lower than.
David Bonson, you're talking about.
That's Bonson.
David Bonson. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I missed that segment. So,
Frank, did you catch him?
Yes.
And was he saying about the rates that they were lower than?
He said that there was some important rate that was at the 2% level that was, and Trump was a real estate guy, and that and they want lower rates. And the problem was that housing, which is rate sensitive, was being frozen by these rates where they are today.
Okay, thank you for that. At least someone's paying attention.
Yeah, and,
No, I've fallen asleep.
But he was agreeing that they should come down.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. There's just any time I hear someone giving a nod to the president, I'm like, okay, interesting. Joshua?
Well, I mean, I definitely think that the Fed chair ought to be independent and as independent as possible. Monetary policy is tricky when you've got a Fed, but when you've got an independent Fed chair and you start doing serious, and the government starts doing some serious, new monetary regulation. We tend to be tricky. I think ultimately, you can run into some issues where the Fed chair, where the Fed chair's priority is, stock market growth and investment growth, and the government's priority is minimizing inflation. So the Fed chair may want to raise rates to promote investment, but the government might want to lower rates to avoid inflation, and then things can get sort of hairy. So I don't know, but also I think monetary policy and macroeconomics, in a lot of ways, is might as well be in Hogwarts, because most of that stuff, I think most of that stuff is guesswork, sleight of hand, and trickery. I don't know. I'm not an economist.
What was just interesting for me about this whole story is we get that thing, it's independent, Fed can't be changed, and then there's this Wall Street Journal, oh, this is how Trump can. So it's like, okay, which is it ultimately? Claudio from Italy.
Yeah, instead, because I have a degree in economy, being in political economy, one of the issue with the inflation rate is that most of the times we have to distinguish between the big money sectors and the low money sector. And most of the time, the low money sector want a lowering of inflation and the raising of interest because they want money back and they want to have good money in a short term scale. Instead, the high money, where it can be finance and other stuff, they want low interest and big inflation. And that's the reason why we had the 2008 and why in Japan they had the bubble era because of the real estate. And because Trump is not good in wanting that the real estate can create another bubble, in my opinion. And in fact, there was this news from the Wall Street Journal regarding Diamond, which is a Trump ally, which is against, in fact, this finance company that can give a private, how can I say the word in English?
Equity?
In practice, private lending. Yes, private lending, because they can create the same bubble of the 2008, because they are not banks, they are private entity giving money, and so interest, debt, it can create this bubble. So in my opinion, the inflation is, I think that in the official way, it should be always under 2%, but there are cases when an economy is too much dynamic or an economy is too much the contrary, that it should be lower than that. Look the Argentina, the Milanese Argentina, look Japan, look China also, for example, that have 5.2% growth. For what? What it will obtain that 5.2% growth? Invisible skyscraper, invisible companies, fake factories created by the government. That's what we have to see before decide the rate of inflation. And in the case of Trump, in my opinion, the augmentation of the inflation rate, it will just allow people to invest on certain things that it was not possible before because of the bubble created by the Biden administration with the greenback deal. And instead there should be low interest rates because they have to obtain all the debts that Wall Street has created back. In my opinion, the interest should be less inflation and less and more interest rates because they have to have all the debt back. All that debt is still the debt that in 2018, 2008 and during Obama and during Biden has been kept there because, no, don't worry, until we are the consumer of the world, we will be okay. We will have an unlimited plafond to do whatever we want. That's not true. One day people will ask the credits.
That's right. They're going to come to collect. Thank you for that, Claudio. ML?
Yeah, I just wanted to, again, if this were Trump one, I would not be so braggadocious or maybe that's on the extreme side or confident, I guess would be a better way. But the more that economic things pop up like this, whether they be tariffs or taxes or whatever, I think that I have I had said like last week or the other thing like a boulder of salt. Well, you take a mountain of salt for all these economic eggheads saying doom and gloom and all this other bullshit, in my opinion, because it's not going to happen. And we know this because, you know, the JP Morgans and all these ones that have did this economic report that were so negative on including the first tax bill, they were wrong. The only time it all came apart was at the very end with COVID, act of God, whatever you want to call it, and everything went to shit. So it wouldn't have mattered if it was Trump or Biden or whatever. But I just want to say, like, I'm not saying that I tune them out 100% because they're still valid to listen to. But like, I can remember for months and months and months, like every quarter, there would be like a good ramp up of like, oh, there's going to be a recession. Oh, this isn't Trump one, by the way. And it never materialized, and they were just beside themselves, befuddled as to how this could occur. So I just think it's just more. It doesn't do the media any favors to do like that. So I just want to say, remain skeptical, hold the line, and we're gonna see it through. And I think that look, I don't think it's gonna be like crazy fire hot. But I think it's gonna. I don't think it's gonna be lukewarm either. I think it's gonna be steady Eddie, and then I think we will pop up, but I don't think we'll see that until next year or the quarters, but we'll see.
Thank you for that, ML. Jen?
Well, okay, I am no brain on economics, but and certainly it will, help jumpstart a lot of, real estate kind of things. But aside from that, if we are wanting certain industries for national security purposes to onshore more of their manufacturing, you've got to give them lower cost ways of coming up with the capital, borrowing, capital to make that happen. So, you're going to make it easier for them to build new factories at 3% than 4% or whatever. So,
thank you for that, Jen. Appreciate that, especially with your insider industry knowledge. Claudio?
Yeah, and adding to what Jen says is also the issue that together with that, at the same time, you can't diminish the rate of inflation if you do that diminishment of interest rates, because in practice, what now is happening is that most of the Americans, let's be honest, they want to work in office. They don't want to work in the manufacturing or in shipyard or in creating bullets or in creating aircraft if there is not a good wage on that. Despite spoiler alert, there is a good wage on that. People can gain $100,000 per year, in contrast with an office working that can take a quarter of that. And in fact, many people now in Wall Street Journal talk about the stuff that we should be more people doing what we always talk with Luke of apprenticeships rather than take a degree or a master degree or some stuff, because let's be honest, better jobs that are created by the public sectors or by rich people or by political parties. Nobody can give a user to a political science guy if he's not able to use a welding machine. Let's be clear. Or if he's not able to use an Italian wrench or an English wrench. So my opinion on that is that we can do what Jen say, but if we do that, we are constrained to raise the inflation rate. And in that case, people will be constrained to go in jobs where there is a real wage, not in the job they dream to be. And the choices will be to go on the manufacturing sector propelled by the government help, or to hope to enter in one of the big four like Deloitte, Amazon, blah, blah, blah. But it will be impossible with the AI arriving, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you for that, Claudia. Joshua?
Yeah, I don't think that's accurate. I just don't think that's sociologically accurate, Claudio. There are a lot of jobs that the politicians and the pundits say that typically, quote unquote, Americans don't want to do, or Italians don't want to do, or the Brits don't want to do, et cetera, right? But with the right incentives, and if you're unemployed or underemployed, with the right incentives and the discipline to say yes, you just do the job. So I don't think it's an inability to fill the positions. I'd love for you to rebut, because I'm trying to clarify my own point on this.
No, the thing is that I agree with you. It's not that I'm against what you're saying. It's that we have to understand which are the right incentives. Because in my opinion, the right incentive is not the diminishment of the interest rates. It should be the diminishment of the inflation. Because if the inflation is less, every kind of money will be worth more. So probably also jobs that we think have less wage, they will be taken.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the solution is diminish the interest rates, hoping that real estate, government, or other stuff will create jobs that will make people gain hundreds of thousands of dollars per year. I'm scared that will not happen. We can already put federal money on shipments, aircraft and stuff without diminishing the interest rates. Is that what I'm saying simply?
Okay,
And
gotcha.
also another thing is that we should focus on welfare reform, other stuff. There are so many people, for example, now in United Kingdom, the Center for Policy Studies is discussing about put the so-called welfare tax. So if a person uses welfare for some time, when he will find a job, he will have to pay back all that is taken in welfare. We can also do stuff like that. For example, I don't know if in America it will work. I think in some
No.
cases but
Nope.
what in my opinion should be done is a reform that say, hey, you were a former welder, you were gaining more before, I'm sorry, you have to do the welder again, otherwise we will not give you welfare. I think that can be done, at least that can be done in my opinion, on a federal level, to tell people we will keep you to give you welfare if you work with the extra money. That could be feasible.
So you can definitely, if the federal government
I am agree with you that we need the right incentive to let people do this stuff.
Okay, so to that point, if the federal government is going to give direct incentives for a thing, like they do it like PSFL, right? So not to get back to education, but public student loan forgiveness. Okay, the condition is we'll give you these loans, and then we'll give you an incentive to go into the public sector where we anticipate that you're going to get a lower wage or a lower salary than you would get otherwise in the private sector. But to incentivize that, we're going to forgive your loans in 10 years versus 20 years like you would have under an IDR program or something like that in the private sector. Yeah. So that to that point, yes. Now, turning welfare assistance into loans, that's a no-go in the United States, buddy.
Okay. All right.
Nobody's doing that.
Jen, you've been waiting patiently.
Well, Claudio, I don't know if we're just different than in Europe, but there are plenty of manufacturing jobs here that pay better than office jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Plenty of them. Somebody mentioned welders. I mean, they're some of the best hourly rates in America. They're I mean, sure. I mean, not maybe the hourly rate of a lawyer or something like that. I mean, a high-powered lawyer, but there are plenty of welders making over $100 an hour. So, you got to be willing to go where the work is and stuff like that. But
no, it's my point. In fact, is what I'm saying. I agree with you and with Joshua. Right. I am the person that will take a degree, but if I have to be able to be a boat carpenter, I will become a boat carpenter. It's not for me a problem. Instead, there are so-called sociological people that would say, no, they told me that with this degree, I will find a job. I'm in humanities. I will find a degree in humanities. No, it's not how it works, buddy. You cannot work in humanities. I'm sorry.
Most people aren't aware of really what manufacturing is like in the United States today.
True.
There are advanced manufacturing. And, aside from that, we'll still need, let's just say, reasonable loan rates to be able to finance the automation and the robots and all of the things that they say are going to be operated in our factories. Basically, I still think you need to lower the rates in order to facilitate the capital needs of that kind of growth. So,
yeah, thank you for that, Jen. And I will just say, there's no substitute for getting America working again, getting people working again, just the personal well-being. I mean, just almost the spiritual consciousness of the nation changes when you get into a can-do approach. And it was like, what was the joke before? I'm not a Mexican, I'm a Mexican. Okay, well, we should be Americans, right? Not Americans.
Boy, man, Raul, you just said that on the live stream.
Hey there. So for our last topic, how the big, beautiful bill will allow...
Wait. I want to make one more comment. I just want to say that the industry, the factory that I work with a lot. They have probably 10 or 15 different families that have more than 3 generations all working at the plant at the same time. It is such a good place to work that, like I said, generations of the family are there, extended families, cousins, and things like that. So in the right environment, when people see what a positive thing it is, it makes a big difference.
Yeah. And I'll just add to that real quick, Jen. I echo that description and that observation from the 20 years I spent growing up in Indiana. Members of my own family would just, from generational, and siblings would be in the same industry, father, son, daughter, mother. They'd go into the same industry, no matter, if it was Columbia House, RIP, or trailer building and stuff like that. So yeah, I think we tend to look at things, particularly when we're talking about macroeconomics, we tend to look at things with a coastal viewpoint instead of a middle America viewpoint. But that's just where the capital is.
Well, it was in my union organizing days. It was when I had a crew of it was black dudes, African American guys, and they were like, "Oh, our buddies are working in the plants, the auto plants." I guess it was Mercedes or whatever, Mercedes Benz. But I just didn't even know that was going on. That auto plants were being built, and people were getting really good money doing overtime, and helping out their families with that situation. Mm-hmm. Okay, so final topic, how the big, beautiful bill will allow President Trump to finally finish the border wall. And I wasn't going to say this, but you guys mentioned Aaron. Aaron said it couldn't be done. So Aaron, where are you? Come back on the show to spar with us here. Estimates vary. This is from the New York Post. Estimates vary, but there are currently about 700 miles of border wall and fencing along the 2,000-mile border. Trump built about 450 miles of barriers during his first term. The big, beautiful bill will dole out more than $46 billion to complete even more funding, funding an estimated 700 miles of border wall, according to the White House. It will also allow the construction of 900 miles of river barriers, 629 miles of secondary fences and barriers, and 141 miles of vehicle and pedestrian blocks. Your host's take: promises made, promises kept. What do folks think about this border wall completion potentially? Claudio.
I think that we should not confuse the fact that there is some concrete wall on the border with the fact that the border is safe and secure through webcams or through border patrol or through drone system, whatever it will use. Because the idea that because there is a wall, there will not be an invasion, it is being the same mistake that Chinese Empire done and then the Mongols arrived. So let's be clear that border control is more than simply put a concrete wall on a border. A border is more a legal and a national thing, like Reagan would say, a nation without border is not a nation. And in my opinion, it's feasible, it can be completed. But at the same time, another thing is that they should come back in the so-called gated system, on the fact that the gate can open when it wants to be open and the gate can close whenever it's closed. Instead, now we don't have this kind of system, and thanks to Trump, we are having for now that, but we need an extra reform, and I think it will happen soon if he will let the Congress to do, which is, of course, all the ones connected with the so-called dreamers.
Okay.
And that's my point.
Thank you, Claudio. Dean.
Yeah. Can you source that comment, Raul, or maybe throw it in the chat? I'd be interested in reading about it. I was unaware. I had hoped there was money in there, but I was unaware of that making it through. And this is it goes right back to, I liked how you set that up. Promises made, promises kept. And I think even more important, though, everything with immigration policy hinges on, regardless of who is in the White House, the border is secure. I would rather spend more money to ensure that the border is secure. You got to stop so we can finally finish border policy wherever we as a country land on that for everyone that is currently here. If I am not of the mind to have any conversations about who gets clemency, who gets, a path to citizenship until the border is 100% secure and it doesn't need the current occupant of the White House to ensure the border remains secure. It's got to remain secure no matter who is in the office in order for us to take another step and start, figuring it out a little bit longer term situation for everyone that's here.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you for that. Jen?
I'm all for, getting the wall done, because I agree, Dean, we've got to get it secured and permanently. But I saw something on YouTube, and it was revealing a discovery of a very massive and highly constructed and sophisticated set of tunnels and control rooms and all kinds of stuff. And I was actually very suspicious of the video, that it might be some kind of, kind of AI generated thing or something, and that it's not really a true story. Does anybody know anything about discovery of this would have been a massive construction project underground, and how that could have happened without us, seeing it via satellite or whatever. Just the amount of concrete and stuff that would have had to go in and out of there. So I just didn't know, has anybody heard anything to verify?
And I'm not sure what you're asking.
The tunnels, right?
A tunnel from Mexico into the heartland?
Yes, into the United States. And these weren't little hewn out of the rock tunnels. These were massive. What was shown was massive concrete lined tunnels that you could have driven trucks through. And they had all kinds of control rooms and wiring and airflow and all kinds of things, so that it's like you could have moved an army through there, really. A very sophisticated set. And so to me, it just, as I was looking at it first, I was shocked, and then I was like, is this even real? So I didn't know, has anybody heard anything about it, or do they know if something like that really exists? Or
That's the earliest. I put it in the chat, a USA Today article on a drug tunnel. It doesn't look like you could drive a truck, but I do see rails. That might not be what you're talking about. I'd need to source it.
Okay, well, I will look and see what you saw. Anymore, you see stuff on the internet and you just have to question whether, is it real?
That's right. That's right. Claudio?
No, it's the reason why I think that is not just the concrete wall that should be ended. They should be ended, as Duke said, the manning, to put all the right men on the border, to be prepared also to this kind of stuff. Because my fear is that people, as I say, will content to have just the wall complete in a physical sense. Instead, it should also be complete on a security sense, in the sense that all the right people of the border patrol are ready. And I think he has found, Mr. Roman, the right opportunity, augmenting the border patrol. No, not the border patrol, the ICE fund. Augmenting all the ICE fund, because it will be an opportunity to have the right human capital, to have people ready to do what people said, like Israel did with the tunnels. They should do like Israel did with the tunnels, because it's not something different in some sense. It's not an invasion of terrorist organization or others, but it's what creates illegal problems and illegal crimes and all yada 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 consequences.
Well, it actually is terrorism. The cartels have been declared terrorist organizations. So
Yes, and we at the end of March show there was a mention of that attack on the ICE facility, right? Kind of a classic distraction. People outside were doing some graffiti. They distracted the police, and then there was a separate attack over here.
and they were using fireworks to shoot at him too, to distract from then shooting him with real bullets.
Yep. And so, yes, I think there's a general agreement. It's not just about a wall. It's also about all these other things. They're all pieces of a puzzle, but it does send a message. And I believe the message is actually one of compassion, which is to dispel folks of this naive idea, right? That you can just pay a coyote or someone to have you sneak through the border, and then America, everything's just being handed out free, left, right. And maybe for some folks, they manage to hustle the system and get that. But then for others, it's not such a great situation. And they're getting mixed signals from previous administrations. But at least I think with our president, they are saying, look, we want proper legal immigration. We want a working system. At the same time, we want a secure border. There's nothing wrong for those to go hand in hand. All right, folks, that's a great show. Moment to wrap on. Okay, I'm going to take us out, and then we'll just hang out post live. Please chill with us 5, 10, 15 minutes at your leisure if you can, if your schedule allows. Here we go.
Sorry if we cut anyone off, but that's a wrap. Remember, you can catch us live Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern. It's your chance to join the conversation and have your voice heard. Just check the link in the description or visit americastalk.show. Together, through the free exchange of ideas, we can truly make America great again. Don't miss out. Tune in and be part of the dialogue.